Hello and welcome back to Crafted by Corie. If you're new, I'm Corie. Welcome to my channel. If you are returning, thank you as always. You mean the world to me. I have some brand new projects for you. Let's go ahead and get right on into the crafting. DIY number one. All right, I have one of these signs from the Dollar Tree and a stencil that I took out of a pack that you're going to see again a little bit later, but just got it prepped and I'm using mineral chalk paint with a baby wipe. So I am making more of a stain with this as opposed to painting it full on. So, or maybe you might want to call it like a mineral wash, but it's mineral chalk paint by Home Decor, and I'm just going to cover the entire surface with that. Once it's dry, I am taping down my stencil. This is by Plaid. You might even be able to see the Plaid logo there in the top. But cutting a couple of pieces of my little makeup sponges that I love to use for my stenciling, and coming in with Imperial Red. This is also by Home Decor, and just kind of dabbing it along. Now, as I had a little too much paint here and there on my little sponge when I would go to pick up my paint, I just kind of dabbed it off to the side, and then I could pick up some more of that paint as needed. You're going to see a little bit later on a project that I did before this, but I'm showing to you later on. I had a little too much paint on my sponge with one of the stencils, and so you live and learn. So here it is, peeling it all off. That was Adirondack white. Once it was dry, I decided I was going to try to sand it a little bit because it just looked a little too perfect. Now, when I did this, it was kind of smudging the paint. Even though it was dry, it was kind of smudging, I guess, the grains of paint. Is that a word? I don't know. Across the surface. So I decided I wasn't going to do any more of that. So there's a little bit of a blur of red and a blur of white there. But I reattached my hanger with the knot at the back, and now I've gone into my floral stash and I've got some lamb's ear here that I'm trying out. I ultimately decided that was a little too big. And then I have some of this, I think this is dogwood. Is that, no, not dogwood. Boxwood. I think this is boxwood. And then some of my lavender picks. So just trying to get an idea of what this might look like. And I decided I wanted to have a bow at the top as well. So I pulled out this really pretty ribbon by Kirkland's. It's from Costco. And I realized I already had made a bow with that during a little Costco ribbon haul / bow tutorial. So I grabbed that bow and I'm going to use it here. And just again, you guys, if you followed me at all for any length of time, you know I'm very visual and I don't like to commit until I have a really good idea of what something is going to look like. So I'm just playing with it here, trying to decide how I want to make this work. I'm going to tuck those ends of my boxwood into the little hanger there, and then I'm going to come in with a whole bunch of hot glue and set my bow down right on top of that. And then once I have that situated and the bow is cool, or the glue is cool, I'm going to grab a couple of pieces of my lavender and tuck that in there as well. I end up having to just trim back that the end of that pick because I had already glued it down, right? I wasn't able to get it tucked in there as far as I might otherwise have. So just getting it to the length that I need it so that I can attach it in there, and I'll tuck it in. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and I'll come back underneath the bow and add some hot glue to it. And I did that on both sides. So then I'll just fluff up my bow, and that's really all there is to this. I think it is super sweet, but let me know what you think of this as well. And yeah. DIY number two. For this project, I have a piece of wood. This is just a scrap from my stash. It's a 1x2 that I picked up at the Home Depot a while back, and I am just gonna just checking the length of it there. It's about 5 inches. So I'm gonna cut that first piece 5 inches, and then I'm gonna cut a second piece about a 1/2 inch longer, so about 5.5 inches. And you might have seen that there was some black ink, like a stamp that they put on the wood. So I'm gonna sand all of my ends to make sure that they can stand up properly on their own. And then I'll also sand off that black ink in just a moment. And now I had that other piece, and it occurred to me when I started trying to sand this, I was like, oh, I wonder if that other piece will work. It would if I cut it again, and I didn't feel like cutting down another piece. So I'd rather keep that in my stash in case I need it for something else. So I sanded that all down, and once I had it the way I wanted it, I'm just making sure that they're gonna stand up next to each other nice and tall without leaning away from each other, because I want these to be kind of snug against each other. And now I have from the Dollar Tree these wooden stickers. I'm gonna paint this one little heart white. You can see it. In the past, I clearly have painted some of these hearts red, but this one I want white. So I'm gonna paint that and set it aside to dry. And now I've got my other two pieces. This is Imperial Red that I'm using again. And I'm going to grab a baby wipe, and I'm going to try to do a red wash, so to speak. But this red is highly, highly pigmented. So it was going on really dark, which is fine and good. It was just a little bit of this went a long way. So just trying to get this on here without making a complete mess of my fingers. And once I had it covered, I'm going to open up. You're going to see me flip the baby wipe here, and I'm just going over it to kind of try to remove some of that excess paint so that it's more of a wash than a complete like thick paint job. Hopefully I'm making sense. Now this pink is a pale pink. I had blended, I think it's called Victorian. The pink that I have in my stash, it's also by Home Decor. It's a little darker. And I had blended this a while back. This has been sitting in my stash. I was really happy to see it hadn't dried out. I had just added some water back into it to get it to the consistency that I want. And I'm doing a wash with this as well with a new baby wipe. I would say this is probably about the color of ballet slipper. I don't have ballet slipper, so I'm not sure, but you can mix paints to whatever color, tone, whatever it is that makes your heart happy. So there's really unlimited potential with the various paint colors you can come up with. So now I have my jute cord. I had picked this up a while back from Walmart. I'm gonna lay these down now. Notice I kept those with the base really, I didn't want it to move, right? I want to make sure this is going to be able to stand up again once I set it back down. So if you're going to pick it up and lay it down to work with it the way that I did, you just want to make sure that it doesn't slide at all, that the bottom stays lined up. And so I just wrapped my jute cord around there a few times. As you saw, I had secured it with a little bit of hot glue at the start, and now I'm going to add a little bit of hot glue there in the center. I'm doing all of my ends in the center here because I'm going to be covering that up with our little white heart that is now dry. So I'm tucking that on there, and it was kind of like falling forward, so to speak. So I'm going to grab my glue gun again in a second and tuck some hot glue. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of out of frame there, but I just put some hot glue behind it along the jute cord, and I am going to press it down. I keep blowing on it, which is why I keep pulling it out of frame, trying to get it to cool. And then also while I was doing that, I noticed that my heart, the edges of it weren't all white. At the time, I had not intended to make them white, but I noticed that I had some paint that went over the one edge. So yeah, coming back in with a little tiny paintbrush. I do recommend doing this before you put it on your project, because I'm having to try not to get it on the jute cord here. I think I got a little teeny bit on there, but it was fine. It was really good. And this ended up turning out so cute. All right, once I have that done, I have a couple of wooden beads that I'm going to place on the top. These are going to be their little heads. I saw this on, I think it was on Pinterest. That's what inspired me to do this. So mine's a little bit different, but just added some hot glue in there, and I'm going to secure their little heads. And now when I did this, I'm like, you know what? But I don't like that hole on the top. The hole was really bothering me. And so I could leave it like this and then let it be all done, but I didn't like the holes. So what I'm going to do is grab my jute cord again. I'm putting some hot glue down inside that little hole, and I'm going to push my little jute cord down inside there. I'm kind of twisting it to help get it inside of there and get it secured. I'm going to cut off a length of that. I would say it was probably 6 or 8 inches that I cut for this particular one. And I'm just going to wrap it around the top of her little head. We're going to create some hair here. And I wrapped it a few times until I got it to where I thought it was low enough. And then I'm going to create like a little ponytail. And I was trying to figure out how best to do the ponytail. You can see me anchoring it down with some more hot glue here. And finally, I decided, you know what, I'm just going to tie a little knot in my jute cord here. So I'm going to tie a regular little simple knot here and secure it down close to the bead, so close to her head. I'm just getting that tight. And then I'm going to grab my hot glue again and put a little bit of... Sorry guys, the dogs are barking. I think Alina just got home from work. But just putting some hot glue there to secure it so it stays flat there. And now I am going to unravel the end of that jute cord and just kind of get it frayed to create her little hair. And just being gentle here because I don't want to break all of the little fibers, and just pulling all of that apart to create, again, her little hair. And now we have squeaky doors in the background, so I apologize for the background noise. But I'm gonna go ahead and get all of that together and trying to get it to lay kind of a little bit flat. It was kind of sticking straight out there for a little bit. So pulling that down and gonna trim off the ends, and now she's got her little ponytail, but again, it was kind of sticking straight out. So I'm gonna use a little bit more hot glue here in a second, just to get it to lay a little bit more like I want it. So teeny tiny bit of hot glue there, laying those fibers down a little bit, and then she'll be set. So doing the same thing with his little head, I'm gonna tuck some jute cord down inside of there, and using a little skewer from another project to tuck it down inside, and then I'll wrap it around his little head as well. For his, clearly we're not making him a ponytail, so I didn't need quite as much jute cord. I cut off maybe a 4 to 5 inch length of it, and I'm just gonna wrap this around and around until I get that all situated. And he's got a little head of hair as well, using a little bit of hot glue. I do have my hot glue on my low setting so that I am less likely to burn myself. You still want to be careful even when it's on the low setting. But I work with this a lot, and I'm usually okay with the low setting, me personally, and I'm just using my fingernails to kind of get the excess glue out of there. I am still being very careful because I can still burn myself on the low setting, just not nearly as badly as with the high setting. So I'm really enjoying the lower setting because it also cools faster and I can work with it a little bit faster. So just trimmed off some of those excess fibers that were sticking out, and that's it. And I think this is so sweet. DIY number 3. All right, these are little mini wine bottles from an advent calendar my sister gave me for the holidays, and they're just single serving little wine bottles. I'm still making my way through them, but they are so adorable. I had to be crafting with them. If you saw my last minis challenge, you saw me paint one of them for that, but we are using 4 of them now, and I'm just gonna start peeling off all of the labels, get these cleaned up. And I did also pull out my little razor blade from the Dollar Tree. I think it came in like a pack of 4. I thought it was the best deal. It's got these little handles. I don't know. Anyway, they're great to work with. So that got most of the adhesive off along with the labels, but now I'm just coming in with some rubbing alcohol to get the little bits of adhesive that I didn't get off with the razor. Now I am going to be painting these in pink, that same pink that I had mixed earlier. You can see my little dowel there that I had used to add the water back in because I did these before. But painting them with a sponge, a little makeup sponge, and then the other 2 I am doing in that imperial red once again. And I apologize for the squeaky doors. I've got kids that are home for the holidays and doing their thing. But once I had those all painted, I am pulling out my stencils. So in addition to that Love You More, I had the You and Me Thankful, the little flowers there, and then this is what I was after was the letters. So I have some other larger stencils that are letters, but they just seemed like they were going to be too big, so I figured that these would work better. Honestly, if I had had an intermediate size, is that a mid-range between the 2, I probably would have gone a little bit bigger than this, but I wanted something a little bit smaller than the other. But this worked out just fine. You could also hand letter these, or you could print out a page and do the, pencil on the back of it and then trace it on and then paint over it. There are a lot of different ways that you can get letters on here. It doesn't have to necessarily be a stencil. So getting these all lined up, because in my head I wanted to make sure that I was going to be placing them all at the same distance. Didn't really occur to me that I was going to be having wet paint to contend with and I wasn't going to want them right next to each other. This is where I messed up and had a little bit too much paint on my thing, so I got a little bit globby. But you know what? It still looked cute and I was just fine with it. You can still tell that it's an L, so it's all good. But just lining these up on my stencil and making sure that I'm not using too much paint after that L. I don't think I actually even had to dip my sponge back into the paint at all after that. So just going through and making sure that they look approximately centered from top to bottom and that they're straight. And you know what? It worked out just fine. They all, at least from my eye, they look like they're all even. So now I have some baker's twine in pink and white. I also have red and white, and I'm just going to tie the pink and white around the red bottles. I wrapped it 3 times. It's going to look like I'm only wrapping it twice. 1, 2, but then with the tails that are coming forward to make that bow, you end up with 3 strands around the neck. Hopefully that makes sense. But so I did the red with the pink, and now I'm going to do the pink with the red, just to give it a little bit of contrast and make everything cohesive with the pink and the red theme. So doing that for all 4 of the little bottles. I'm not sure why I felt the need to show you how I did this on every single one of them, because I think you got more than the idea of what I'm trying to do here. But once I had those set, I pulled out some baby's breath from my stash. These I had gotten on Amazon recently for a wreath that I had been creating. Actually, I think I did a couple of wreaths recently with these, but normally I would just, I don't know why, I'm just bending up the long stems on these. These had extra long stems, and I'm just bending them and putting them down into the container just in case I want to use them for another project. To be honest, if I use them for another project, I'll probably cut the tails off of them anyway, so I'm not sure why I felt the need to preserve them, but that's what I did for this. Feel free to cut them down for your project, but then I just fluffed up the baby's breath got it to where I wanted it, and this is going to be all set and done. I love this. I hope you love it too, but let me know what you think of this one. And now it's time for a shout out timeout. Great, Brenda. Brenda used the alcohol inks to make this look like stained glass. I think it is so cute. Thank you for sharing. I would love to give you a shout out as well. If you have interest, just send me an email at craftedbycorie@gmail.com. DIY number 4. All right, I have these little cork stoppers from those little mini wine bottles. So they are not going to waste. We are going to use them. I've got 5, one from the minis video I had done, and now 4 additionals. And I am going to pull out all of the paper that I'd like to use for this project. I have 2 pieces of 8.5 by 11 cardstock, and then I've got scrapbook paper pages. I'm just trying to find things that are complementary in patterns or colors, really. So I don't know. I wanted them to be contrasting but complementary. So I've also got this giant piece of, it's just like copy paper, but it's huge. I don't know what size it is. If I had to guess, I would say it's probably 16 by 20 or something like that. But now I've got a clock going on. Y'all, I can't win this morning. I have so much going on in my house with not all that much going on in my house, just a lot of background noise. I apologize. But I'm basically just cutting it down to the size of the scrapbook paper so that I can make a pattern. So folding my paper in half, and you could draw this first if you wanted to. I am just going to cut out a heart shape and I'm gonna get that all, yeah, it's just a teardrop shape. So I've got my pattern here, I got my heart, and I am going to go ahead and put it on the back of my page. I was just looking to see which way I wanted the pattern to be going. I did go ahead and trace this, and then I cut it out for this first heart. But with the rest of them, I ended up just using this first heart and holding it up and just cutting around it. I didn't bother with tracing and doing that. So cut out all of my hearts. Now with the 8.5 by 11 sheets, clearly those are smaller than the scrapbook pages, so my pattern was going to be a little bit too big. So I just cut down my pattern to create a smaller heart, and I went with it from there. So I cut it down a little bit, opened it up. It was still a little too wide, so I went ahead and cut off a little bit more. And if I had to do these again, I would probably make these hearts much more narrow rather than wide. And you'll see why in a little bit, but I would have made them tall and skinny hearts because I think it would have worked out better with this particular project. But I went ahead and cut out the pink and purple the same way that I did the others. And once I had all of my hearts cut out, I'm going to go ahead and start folding the hearts in a fan pattern. So I'm going to start at the bottom and fold it up and then down and just back and forth like you would if you were creating a fan with a regular piece of paper. Now I started at the bottom because I felt like it was just going to be easier than trying to line up the top with the bumps in the heart. So that was the reason I started at the bottom with each of these. And once I had it all folded, I'm just trying to make sure I'm keeping it straight going up the length of the heart. But you can see now why it would be better if it was, if they were skinny hearts. You'll see better in a minute. But I took my hole puncher. Don't recommend trying to go through all these layers of cardstock with a hole puncher because it just wasn't happening. So I pulled it out and I'm just going to do a couple at a time. And then I'm going to use the first holes that I created to make sure that I'm lining up with each consecutive hole, because you got to make sure that these holes are all lined up. So I'm using the hole that I made previously to guide the next hole that I'm punching. Hopefully that makes sense. But looking at that purple one that's laying there now, you can see it would have been better if the hearts were, skinnier, because once you crunch them like that, they get wider all by themselves. If you know what I mean. Now these are a bunch of skewers from the Dollar Tree. I'm just putting them right down through my hearts, and I've got the pointy end at the bottom, and that is where our little cork is going to come in. This is going to be anchored down into the cork in a minute. But right now I'm just trying to figure out what length I need to have. Oh, yep. And then I'm going to go ahead and anchor it down. I decided to anchor it and then finish determining how tall I wanted these to be. So kind of pull it down. And I didn't show you because it was off screen, but I used my little dog nail clippers to trim the skewer. I did find that my scissors also work just fine with these. So if you don't have dog nail clippers, you can totally use scissors. And then I trimmed down the rest of my skewers to be about the same height as that first one. Now with the pink and purple, I am going to need to trim that down even further because those hearts are a little bit smaller than the other ones that I did with the scrapbook paper. I did decide that it was easier to put these skewers into the little corks before I added on my paper hearts. So I went ahead and did that. And then I added on the hearts. Now, when if you fold them back up into their fan shape, it's a lot easier to get them on there, and you just have to delicately kind of open them up along the skewer. So I was showing you these other heart picks that I have. I'm going to be using those in a second, but first I'm going to just anchor these at the top and bottom with the hot glue because it was kind of collapsing on itself. And then I guess I don't think I anchored the top of this one yet. I wanted to see where this heart was going to land. So I am basically sharpening the top of the skewer by trimming it with my scissors and just cutting it away to make a point so that I can stick it into that foam heart in a second. But you could also use a pencil sharpener. If you have a pencil sharpener, that would work too, I would think. And then I just stuck that little heart on there, and now I'm going to anchor it with some more hot glue at the top now that I know where I want it to sit. And sorry, I'm kind of out of frame here, but I'm just putting a little bit of hot glue on the back side up against the skewer where it meets the paper so that it's just not gonna, it's anchored and it's not gonna start moving. And I put a little bit at the top of the heart there too because there wasn't another hole there for it to grab. So for the pink and purple ones, as I mentioned, I've got to make these a little bit shorter. So I cut that off at an angle to help with making my little point, and then just trimmed it up to get it sharp, knocking things over. And then I could set my little heart right down on top of there. All right, and here they are all made. Let me know what you think of these. Okay, everybody, that's it for today. If you enjoyed the projects, remember, give me a big thumbs up, leave me a comment, let me know which one was your favorite. And until the next time, be well, be kind, and make it a great day. Thank you so much for watching. Take good care. Bye.